this week, it's all about those figures. And the reason those figures are so important is if you listen to what we're likely to hear on Thursday from the Treasurer's update, but also actually taking into account tomorrow, for someone like me, watching monetary policy is a much bigger thing for markets particularly. And the statement, or the speech anyway, to the Annika Foundation from Governor Lowe is titled COVID, the Labour Market, and also Public Sector Balance Sheets. Now that in itself very clearly highlights why Thursday is so important, because the RBA believes that all of this comes down to your question. If we can keep labour participation at least at current levels, they're not great. In fact, they're pretty terrible, let's be honest. But if we can keep them at those kinds of levels, then we may be able to get through this whole scenario slightly better than what we probably were forecasting. His speech will also highlight the idea that right now, borrowing is probably one of the things that we need to do. It is incredibly cheap. We understand that. There is always that discussion around, borrowing from the future is the term that we use in economics, which is if we borrow now, future generations won't be able to do it in the future and therefore expand the economy then. But it is the right time. And that's what tomorrow's speech is going to be about, and why Thursday and the possibility of extension of JobKeeper, JobSeeker, whatever it might take, is so important to getting us through, as they say, and across the bridge into the next future levels.
It's interesting to see these speeches still holding so much stock when there's really not much left that the Reserve Bank can do in terms of lowering interest rates to try and stimulate the economy. We've already hit quantitative easing, but just casting ahead to Thursday, some commentators are saying we're expecting the worst deficit since World War II. Do you think it will get that bad?
Again, so that's the question, is that yes, it will be. The part that we're all debating at the moment is the word bad. And what I mean by that is that you are now asking that question, does public sector balance sheets and that level of debt that we're alluding to, the fact that, yes, it will be the worst since World War II, is that actually necessarily seen as a bad thing? Is it a scenario now where we need to understand that probably for the foreseeable future and looking between sort of 2 to 5 years, state intervention in employment is going to be pretty high? And that is the question that this all comes to. It's why we've got to this level of debt that you're alluding to from Second World War. JobKeeper and JobSeeker are state intervention in the employment market. And that is the only way to sum it up in a very short way, sort of sign. And that is going to be sustained for the foreseeable future. You can hear the politics on both sides that are playing out, trying to sort of say yes or no, and it should be X, Y, Z. But in the end, the central view is it will be there. It will be there to support, and it will be there, probably done more on a means test as we go forward. But either way, it's also going to be longer than probably the forecasted extension out to February. Some are even saying March. If you look at what's been said and how we're going to have to operate over the next period, it's probably likely to continue to see some form of program like this all the way through to September next year, because that is the earliest point that a possible vaccinated population happens and that the economy, inverted commas, possibly starts to stand on its own 2 feet without social distancing issues, without current lockdown issues that we're currently going through. So that is the question. It's why we are going to have an incredibly large debt on the balance sheet for a foreseeable future and probably for at least 2 decades to come.